Imagine this, a recruiter reaches out to you to recruit you into a competitor, and it seems to be too good to be true. In fact, they offer you so much money to join their team, $12 million guaranteed to be exact, that you can barely contain your excitement as you head down to sign the dotted line. So of course you head over to their offices, sign that offer letter and all 8 pages of fine print, but then later you back out because you got cold feet and your employer made you a counter that you can't refuse. And then a few weeks later, you get a bill in the mail for $4 million as a clawback. And if you think this story is unbelievable, it's actually true and it's happening right now. Stick around and I'll tell you more. Hey everybody, it's Brian from Life After Layoff, and today I want to share with you a pretty incredible story that's unraveling right now in the world of finance recruiting. And this story also highlights the importance of getting yourself a very differentiated skill set, making yourself very in demand on the open market, and then maybe why you shouldn't accept counteroffers to begin with. But before we get into that, if you're interested in learning how to reclaim control and start to act like the CEO of your career, and maybe learn how to attract $12 million guaranteed offers yourself, sign up for my free newsletter. And in it, I share concise, actionable tips on how to approach your job search and your career with more conviction and authority so that you're highly in demand, just like this guy. Keep in mind, it's absolutely free, and I hope to see you there. So the story involves 8 people who worked at Credit Suisse back in 2017. And there was a competitor, a financial services company called Jeffries, that was aggressively poaching investment bankers. And in this case, Dean Decker, the star employee from Credit Suisse, was one of the people who was targeted, and they made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. They offered him 2 years of guaranteed income. The first year was $10 million guaranteed, with the second year being $2 million guaranteed. And of course, they gave him the opportunity to continue to earn if he was producing the way he was at Credit Suisse. Now, they previously tried to poach Dean, who was well known as a rainmaker for Credit Suisse, so he had a great reputation on the market, and Jeffries knew exactly what they were trying to get, so they made a very sweet offer. And at the time, Dean was dealing with some instability at Credit Suisse, and he made his lowest amount of income in the year 2015 at only $1.5 million. I know it's kind of hard to feel bad for him, but nonetheless, that was the least amount of money he had made in years. So it was a pretty ripe time for Jeffries to sweep in and try to offer him a much sweeter deal. And let's face it, with the kind of numbers that Jeffries was throwing around, who could blame Decker for at least hearing them up on their offer? And as he entered into Jeffries' offices to execute this deal, he walked into a conference room full of a bunch of attorneys. And across the table, they slid him the terms of the offer. Now, this offer was unique. It wasn't the standard offer letter that you might expect to see, because in the investment banking world, it's very high stakes recruiting, as you might imagine. And so they want to protect their investment. And what had been commonly happening was Jeffries had been offering people jobs, and they'd been backing out and using that as leverage to just get better offers from their previous employers. So in other words, these counter offers. So then Ben Laredo, the head of Jeffries' investment group, got sick of this and used his mergers and acquisitions background to start putting clawback clauses into the employment contracts. So what he did was he put a clause into this contract that was very common in mergers and acquisitions, but certainly not common in employment contracts. And what it said was, if you fail to live up to your end of the bargain, in other words, you don't follow through and quit your job and come and join our firm, then you're going to owe us $4 million in clawback. So in other words, you would get penalized if you didn't follow through with your intentions. Even though Decker knew the risks, in fact, he even called it out, and Laredo said, this is a non-negotiable part of this employment contract, Decker signed it anyway. But remember how I told you there were several other bankers who also got similar deals. One of his colleagues in particular, Jonathan Moneypenny, ended up getting a similar deal with an even bigger clawback of $5 million. Well, it turns out that Moneypenny didn't have any intention of joining Jeffries after all. And in fact, he used that offer to negotiate a better term with Credit Suisse. And when Decker learned this, he felt a little bit pissed off and betrayed, because now Moneypenny's back at Credit Suisse with an even sweeter deal. And suddenly he gets cold feet himself. Granted, he's already executed this offer. And so what does he do? Does the same thing that Moneypenny does and uses his offer to go and negotiate better terms with Credit Suisse. And Credit Suisse is pleased about this because they were about to lose all of their star bankers. In fact, out of the 8 people that Jeffries offered and tried to poach, only 3 actually ended up signing on and leaving Credit Suisse. So here he is, as happy as can be, staying with Credit Suisse, but having a much better deal as a result of his renegotiation. Well, Jeffries wasn't going to have that, and they promptly proceeded to pursue collecting on the debt as set forth in the employment arrangement. And now, of course, they disputed it and it went to arbitration, and both Moneypenny and a couple of other bankers actually won. And a third one liquidated damages, but still was on the hook for over $900,000 in other damages. So that left Decker by himself as the last remaining employee to go through arbitration. And guess what happened? That's right, he loses his arbitration and now goes into the courts in California. And really, Jeffries' argument was very simple. He signed a deal, he didn't live up to it, and he benefited greatly in his career financially by leveraging our offer with Credit Suisse. And they argued that, in fact, Decker was the only one who won because the other two got gamed by him. And to make matters more interesting, Credit Suisse has agreed to cover his legal bill, so they're actually defending it on behalf. And if early indications are correct, it does look like the state of California and the judges who are on this case are looking skeptically at Decker's defense. But what makes this story even more ironic is that now none of these people are actually even with Credit Suisse anymore or Jeffries. They've actually moved on to new companies altogether. And keep in mind that this happened back in 2016, 2017, but we're now seeing the fallout of this court case. And so it's still too early to be determined of what's going to happen, but it could likely have very big implications for employment contracts in the state of California and how it might impact other industries. First of all, a little bit of learning here. It pays to be highly in demand, literally. If you have a good employment brand and you've carved yourself out a very nice niche and you've got high level results, you can make an obnoxious amount of money if you choose the right career path. Now, I'll say this, before you rush out and try to become an investment banker, it's very rarefied air and it's incredibly difficult to get your foot in the door and get started there. You probably have to go to an Ivy League school. You probably have to know somebody who knows somebody in order to get your foot in the door, and you have to have some stellar results. And while that money may sound glamorous, and rightfully so, I'm sure there's a significant sacrifice that you have to make in order to operate at that level. Furthermore, these jobs are few and far between, and they're getting even more rare because a lot of these same financial services companies are actually laying off a lot of their traders. But nonetheless, carving yourself out a niche in a very high-powered and high-paying industry and being the top performer in that industry can be a very rewarding career path. So if you're thinking about differentiating yourself, look at these two people as an example. Secondly, you need to make sure that you're reading the fine print very carefully and understanding what it is that you're signing. Personally, I have never seen a clawback on somebody not following through on an offer letter, because companies, honestly, they do the same thing. But I would say that you need to make sure that you look very carefully at any offer you sign and understand the terms very carefully. And when you're dealing with these types of jobs, it's very cutthroat, it's very vicious, the recruiting is extremely aggressive. And it's no wonder that they're going after these people this aggressively, because the cost that it takes to try to recruit one of them. So again, make sure that you know what you're signing before you sign it so that you know exactly what it is that you're committing to. If you have any questions at all about the employment contract, make sure that you get it clarified and renegotiate at the time before you sign it. Of course, if you watch my video on counteroffers, you know how I feel about that. I think in this case, it's a very risky proposition to try to use somebody else's offer to leverage a much higher offer at your current company. Because if you find yourself being underpaid because some hotshot company has thrown a massive offer at you and your company is trying to figure out a way to afford you, you can guarantee that you're now going to be looked at as a flight risk. In this case, he was making 1.5 most recently when he signed this offer, and Credit Suisse probably had to scramble and come up with several million more dollars to keep him. You got to think that there's contingency plans, and they're probably trying to hire for his replacement. Now, that's an excellent place for you to be if you can leverage those kinds of numbers, but let's face it, most people don't have that kind of leverage with their employer. So if you decide to sign an offer letter and then go back and use that as a counter, just be very careful how you approach that, because it could come back and bite you. Anyway, the story's still evolving. I don't think that this is going to be something that's going to be very commonplace in job offers, especially in today's market where everything seems so temporary. Companies are laying off left and right. But nonetheless, it'll be interesting to see what the fallout is from this and how this court case ends up panning out. But what are your opinion? Do you think that he should pay back this money or should be on the hook for it, even though he signed the offer? Let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, like always, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.